Well, hey there, friends. I'm your host, Penny, and this is Criminally Nerdy. Welcome back, crime connoisseurs. I hope you all had a fun and safe St. Patrick's Day. I was quite busy attending my 4-year-old's birthday festivities. From pub crawls to pizza parties. Life does change. Before we dive in, I just want to thank everyone who has subscribed, rated, reviewed, commented, reached out, you've all been so incredibly supportive, and I just can't tell you how much it means to me. You guys are the fucking best, and I am so lucky to have such great people cheering me on. You guys rock. The case I have for you today was suggested by Emily McDaniel. Be warned, this case does involve the death and abuse of a child. If that is something you don't want to hear about, I completely understand. I'll catch you next week. This episode will be a bit of a longer one. It could last hours because it is detail heavy, but I'll be doing my best to summarize it while still covering the major points. This case is the dot over the I in Jeremy Bearimy, and I am Cheaty. It broke me. This is the tragic case of Gannon Stauch. Gannon Stauch, 11, lived with his father, Al, stepmother, Letitia, 8-year-old little sister, Lena, and Letitia's daughter, 17-year-old stepsister, Harley, in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Gannon and his little sister's mother, Landon, lived in South Carolina. Al and Letitia did not have any biological children together. Though there was some distance between the blended families, they seemed to co-parent the best they could. On January 27, 2020, Gannon was reported missing and a possible runaway at 6:55 p.m. by his stepmother, Letitia. She said that he had gone to a friend's house around 3:30 that afternoon, and she hadn't seen him since. Al was on assignment in Oklahoma at the time with the National Guard. Panicked, he took the first flight home. Gannon's mother, Landon, also flew in immediately. An exhaustive search ensued with hundreds of friends, neighbors, volunteers, law enforcement, fire department, even members of the National Guard. They were on foot, they were using drones, ATVs, planes, you name it. Gannon was upgraded to missing and endangered on January 30th because of the amount of time he'd been missing, the fact that he had some medication that he was supposed to take that he clearly wasn't taking, and, the winter in Colorado of it all. Unfortunately, Gannon seemed to have vanished without a trace. Nearly 2 months later, on St. Patrick's Day, March 17, 2020, inspectors from the Department of Transportation discovered a suitcase underneath the Escambia Bridge in Pace, Florida. Inside, they found the remains of a young boy wrapped in blankets. The child had suffered a horrific death. 18 stab wounds to the chest and back, a gunshot to the jaw, multiple blunt force trauma wounds, and multiple defensive wounds on his hands and arms. On March 20th, authorities confirmed every family's worst fear. The remains belonged to Gannon. Unlike many cases, however, the police already had the suspect in custody. Cops were coppin'. Detectives were detectin'. Though the suspect attempted to hide their guilt, the authorities were able to see right through their inexplicable behavior and many, many lies. So let's go back to the beginning. On January 26th, the day before Gannon was reported missing, his stepmother Letitia had texted his father Al that Gannon was having some stomach issues and that she would be taking the next day off to stay home and take care of him. What she did next, I cannot think of a logical explanation for. She texted her boss at 4:37 a.m. that she wouldn't be into work that day because her stepfather, who had passed away years before, had just been hit by a car and died. What? Having a sick child is a very valid reason not to go to work. Literally everyone knows. Kids get sick. They're little germ factories. It happens. And do you not think people are going to follow up on that? You just told your work fam that your parent died. You don't think they're going to mention it when you go back to work? I am not smart or dumb enough to reverse engineer the logic behind that decision. On January 27th, she takes a picture of Gannon sleeping in his bed just after 8 a.m. and sends it to Al. Lena goes to school, Harley goes to work. Gannon and Letitia leave the house a little after 10 a.m. and return just after 2 p.m. Why you're taking a sick kid out for 4 hours is beyond me, but sometimes they do bounce back quickly, so I'll let that go. Strangely, though, she left her phone at home during this time, which is something everyone said was unheard of from her. While out, a text was sent from Gannon's phone to Harley that Tisha had left her phone at home and if she needed her to text his phone. At 1:22 p.m., Gannon's phone Googled, "Can my parents find my cell phone if it's off?" Instead of a space between the words phone and if, there was a period. And this was Letitia's typical typing style. It was pretty obvious that she was trying to set up the narrative of Gannon running away. Speaking of, let's talk about Letitia's Google history the past 2 days. She Googled, "Find real military singles. Parenting should be 3 people, not 1. I'm overdoing all the work for my stepkids and their mom doesn't help. Mom advice from stepmom. If you aren't involved in your kid's life, you're shitty. My husband's ex-wife does nothing for her kids. I wonder if my husband's ex-wife is sending me a Valentine's Day card since I raise her kids." She Googled that one 3 times. "One day, people will wish they had treated you differently." She Googled that twice. "Why my husband should choose me over his family. Find me a rich guy who wants me to take care of his kids. Find a guy who wants me to take care of his kids and get paid. It's crappy some parents don't care for their kids or buy them presents." Does this bitch think Google is her diary? What the fuck? No matter how you look at it, though, she is clearly resentful towards her husband and her stepchildren. Back to the 27th. Letitia and Gannon are home by 2:19 p.m. This time was verified by a neighbor's security system. There was a lot of debate and controversy over whether Gannon had returned home with her after their outing because he couldn't be seen getting out of the car. However, authorities verified later that he did return and it was simply the angle of the camera. Letitia does not unlock her phone until 2:45 p.m. What happened during those 26 minutes? Only Letitia and Gannon know. Lena returns from school around 3:15 and Letitia tells her that she needs to play outside because Gannon is resting. When Harley gets home from work, she takes Lena with her to run some errands. While they're out, Letitia texts Harley to pick up a few things. The list she sent was trash bags, floor cleaner, baking soda, and vinegar. Okay, Mr. Kaplan. Guys, if literally anyone texts you that list, they're cleaning up a crime scene. Like, unless this is your ride or die and you have a pact, run. Now we're to 6:55 when Letitia reports Gannon missing and a possible runaway to the El Paso Sheriff's Department. When the officer comes to take her statement, she says that she last saw him around 3:30 leaving to go to a friend's house. Rule number 1 is that if you stay homesick, you don't get to hang out with your friends that day. Every parent, every kid, everyone knows that. Letitia tells the officer that she got worried when he didn't come home, so she went to the neighbor's house to look for him. But when he asked where the house was where she checked, she couldn't remember the address, the name of his friend, or the name of his friend's parents. Yeah, normal. The officer asks to take a look around the house, and she says that's fine. He didn't find Gannon or any signs of foul play. He did note that Letitia's vehicle was backed into the garage, however. Folks would later say that this is highly unusual for her. And I just gotta say, same. I don't back in unless I've got someone aircraft marshalling me with the orange light signals. If I've backed into a space, no, I didn't. My wife did it for me. He notes that there is a suitcase inside of the vehicle, but that was it. When asked if anything was missing, she said that his Nintendo Switch was gone. The officer files the report, and the searches begin. On January 28th, Letitia leaves to pick Al up from the airport. She goes to the short-term parking, leaves her car, and then proceeds to rent another vehicle. Super normal! When Al asks, as anyone would, she says she didn't want to put extra miles on their car because it was a lease, so she parked it at the elementary school. So did you just teleport to the rental place? They get home and Al also gives the authorities permission to search the house. This time they are much more thorough. They found several carpet brushes in the dishwasher that had recently been run. They also found a 9mm handgun. In Gannon's room, which was in the basement, using luminol, they discovered blood on the walls that someone had clearly attempted to clean. When they removed the sheet from his bed, the luminol showed that there had been enough blood loss to soak through the mattress to the floor, through the carpet, and into the concrete below. They also noticed that the sheets on Gannon's bed don't match the ones in the picture Letitia had taken the day earlier. In fact, the sheets, blankets, and even pillows were different. They searched the house for the bedding in the photo, but they couldn't find it. They search the rest of the home with luminol and find a trail of blood that leads from Gannon's room to the utility room, up the stairs, and into the garage where Letitia's car had been parked. A car they couldn't search because it was conveniently not there. Investigators were pretty smart, though. They kept all of this information to themselves. Letitia starts to get squirrely, though, especially after they asked for Gannon's toothbrush so they could get a DNA sample. I'm sorry, but if my child is missing, I will give you literally anything you want to try to help find him. Toothbrush, hairbrush, nail clippers, clothes, fucking anything you want. Not Letitia. She texts Al that she thinks they are hiding something and then visits her old bestie Google and searches, "They are asking for our son's toothbrush, but say nothing is wrong." Did I forget to mention that she also Googled, "Can Nintendo find my Switch?" Yeah, smooth. Around 7 p.m., she goes to pick her car up from the airport. She puts her phone on airplane mode before leaving, but police were later able to obtain the GPS information from her car. She drove around for about 2 hours and then stopped in a rural area near Highway 105 and South Perry Park Road. She stayed in the area for about 15 minutes. This is where she hid the suitcase containing Gannon's body. She later texted one of the investigators who said that he just wanted to talk to her and get some information. She agreed to come into the station the next day at 10 a.m. And she's like super reliable, so that's going to happen, right? Right. The next morning, she returns the rental and then takes her car to the car wash. Investigators note that her car was still wet when she arrived to her appointment 2 hours late. Again, I'm sorry, but if my child is missing, I am going to be there 2 hours early. I am going to be camping on your front porch. I am going to be hounding you to find my baby. She brought several pieces of paper with her, which turned out to be notes, and she kept referring to them during her interview. And this time, she had a new story to tell. Letitia tells investigators that the day before Gannon went missing, he had burned the carpet with a candle. There was construction going on around the area, so she drove around looking for someone who could help her fix it. She found a man named Eduardo who agreed to fix the carpet the following day while she was out shopping, so she gives him her garage code. A total stranger gave him her garage code. That's not generally regarded as like stupid as shit or anything. She then said the next day when she and Gannon returned home, Eduardo was in the house and held them at gunpoint. He allowed her to go upstairs and greet Lena when she returned from school and send her outside. What a nice guy. Afterwards, she claimed he began raping her. During the rape, she said that Gannon had jumped on the man's back and the man threw him across the room. After the rape, Eduardo held a gun to Gannon and demanded a suitcase. She provided him with a brown one and a cardboard box. He then went to sexually assault her again, but instead hit her in the head and she blacked out. When she woke up, Eduardo and Gannon were gone. So she proceeded to clean up the mess from the attack, as you would. Now remember, investigators aren't showing their hand. No one knows what data they've gathered. Not Al, not Letitia, not the media. So they have to sit there and take this statement with a straight face. And I'm telling you, like, I could not do it. I have no poker face. If my mouth doesn't say it, my face will. Towards the end of the interview, she starts getting squirrely again when they seize her phone. She wants to leave, but they tell her she can't yet. They are still waiting on a warrant for her DNA. So, naturally, she stuffs all of the tissues that she had used during the interview down her pants and then begins complaining of chest pain and shortness of breath. Police call for medical support and she is transported to the hospital where she has a miraculous recovery. Doctors note that there is no injury to her head where she reported being hit and that she declined a rape examination. Investigators were with her, still waiting on the warrant, but they didn't physically restrain her, so she signed herself out of the hospital. Though they do not believe her, investigators do their due diligence and confirm through security footage that no one other than Letitia and Gannon had entered the home, and that she was actually on her phone during the reported attack, sending 8 texts and making 1 call. Now that she's escaped the hospital and the authorities, she asks her aunt to rent her a car, but investigators pretty much immediately get a warrant to install GPS on it. Like, what is she thinking? Does she think that they're just going to let it go? Oh, well, she didn't give us her DNA sample, so On to the next. On January 31st, she gave an interview to a local news station. I'm not going to include it here because I don't know how, and I don't want you all losing the IQ points that I did while listening to her. I will share this quote, though. She says, "I took care of Gannon for the last 2 years in our home. I would never, ever, ever hurt this child. I know there are some questions out there. That's up to investigators when they end up letting you guys know, but I have cooperated with them. We are going to find Gannon, and that's the main goal we all have. I am just ready for Gannon to come home." The same fucking day, GPS shows that she went back to Highway 105 and South Perry Park Road and retrieved his body. She then rented a van and purchased a phone at Walmart. She and her daughter Harley start to make their way to South Carolina. On February 4th, just after midnight, they made a stop in Pensacola, Florida, staying in a hotel 3 miles from the Escambia Bridge. This is when, at some point, she took the suitcase and threw it over the side. Over the next couple of weeks, she speaks with Al on the phone and gives him multiple different stories. Story number 2 at this point is Gannon burned himself playing with a candle, which caused his skin to bubble, and then Gannon peeled the skin off and wiped the blood on the walls. Please note, investigators have not mentioned the blood on the walls, so only the killer would have known it was there. Story number 3 is when officers came to the house, the abductor was still there, and she tried to signal the officers that someone was there, but they didn't catch on. Story number 4. She was raped in the home by a man named Quincy Brown, who then abducted Gannon. She knew his name because his ID fell out of his pocket. That is so convenient. Story number 5. Quincy Brown followed her home from Petco and laid down in front of her car. When she stopped to avoid running him over, he jumped in her car and made her drive him to his house, where he then raped her. Story number 6. She and Gannon went to County Line Road and Highway 105. He was riding his bike, fell off, hit his head, and then was abducted by Quincy Brown and a man named Terrence. Again, investigators have made no mention that they know she has been to the Highway 105 area or that they have found a piece of particle board with Gannon's blood on it. Story number 7, this one is rough, so you might want to skip ahead a couple seconds. I honestly don't even want to say it. Even though I know that it's not true, it's still difficult to say and hear. In story number 7, she says that the blood in Gannon's room was a combination of her blood and Gannon's because, quote, an abductor had anally penetrated them both with an object and then she was tied up. Story number 8. A woman who looked pregnant stopped her and asked her for help. When she got into Letitia's car, she revealed that her belly was actually just full of cash and that she was involved in organized crime. All of these stories end with whoever the assailant of the day was abducting Gannon. Letitia later confided in her friend that she'd been feeding Al false stories because she thinks it's what he wants to hear. Nowhere in the multiverse would any parent want to hear any of these things. On February 18th, Letitia paid for and took a test on fakepolygraph.com. I shit you not. I could not make this up if I tried. The website allows people to ask their own questions, provide their own answers, and then the company will send a certificate stating that the person passed. When they didn't send the certificate, she went full Karen and called them asking why. She was told that management had blocked the certificate because the questions related to illegal activity, which they had to report to authorities. And then she asked if they were gonna keep her money. Meanwhile, social media is exploding with theories, most of which point to Letitia. Some people question if this candle incident really happened. In a horrific move, on February 19th, Letitia posts a video that she had taken of Gannon on January 26th. I won't be including this video because, again, I don't know how, and it is truly gut-wrenching. I legitimately cried. The video is of Letitia freaking out on him over some spilled wax. She asks him to pinky promise that he didn't do it on purpose, and he can be heard in the background just crying, and you can hear the fear in his voice. It's rattling. He swears that he didn't do it on purpose, and then she proceeds to guilt trip this poor boy, saying that they will have to sell things to fix this. Over spilled fucking wax. Bitch, Google it. We know you know how. You don't need to sell a sofa, and you surely don't need to traumatize an innocent child. Though they have not found Gannon's body, police have enough evidence to issue a warrant. Letitia was arrested in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on March 2nd for first-degree murder of a child under the age of 12 in a position of trust, tampering with a deceased body, and tampering with physical evidence. While being extradited back to Colorado, she broke free of her restraints and attacked one of her escorts. In June 2020, she was charged with soliciting another inmate to help her escape from jail. This woman just does not know when to stop. Her case was just about as wild as she was. First, she pled guilty, then not guilty by reason of insanity. 3 separate evaluations found her competent to stand trial. At one point, she pulled a Ted Bundy and fired her public defender so that she could represent herself, because statistically, of course, that always ends well. It is at this time that some believe she did have a slight break in reality / nervous breakdown. And I mean, hey, I had a nervous breakdown once because I started taking Wellbutrin and I had too many emails. I can't imagine what would happen to someone's sanity after doing what she did. And part of me wants to be like, you deserve it because nervous breakdowns fucking suck. And the other part of me is like, fuck you. I want you stuck in this reality of what you did. I want you facing it every single day. She did eventually request public defenders again. Of the many people who testified against her, some of the more notable were her now ex-husband, Al, who filed for divorce 2 days after she was arrested. He was not playing around. He said, quote, "I believe she is and was absolutely sane from the first day I met her to even today." Her half-brother, who stated that he saw the suitcase in her van. Her former neighbor, who stated Letitia tried to pay her to lie to law enforcement and say that she had seen someone take Gannon. And finally, her own daughter, Harley. She states she had no knowledge of the killing, but that she had been abused and manipulated by her mother. Oh, let's not forget Google now. You didn't think that we'd heard the last of her old bestie, did you? In the days leading up to her arrest, her searches included fake polygraph search. Need a guy who wants me to move in. Find a man with a place to let me move in. Change my facial appearance. Drastic ways to change your appearance. See what my face will be with plastic surgery. Plastic surgery, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Gannon Stauch found. This is prior to him being found. Replacement passport. Shock from watching someone get shot. Face mask that looks like a real disguise. How do police tell whose body has been found? Can God help me escape jail time? How do they identify whose blood is at a scene? Find people who want to go to jail. Spanish girl names. Find an immigrant who will admit to a crime. Okay, how, in the year 2020, do you not know that your Google searches can be used as evidence? Like, how do you not know that? I mean, I'm sure that my Google searches have me on one or many federal watch lists, and I have said that no one, absolutely no one around me can die of mysterious circumstances because my Google searches alone would have me put away for life. They'd be like, nah, she did it. Just look at her Googles. On May 8th, she was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Judge Werner said, quote, "I can say without hesitation that the facts in this case are the most horrific I have ever seen. Your conduct within this case demands the maximum punishment I can impose under the Colorado law." Gannon Stauch was born on September 29, 2008, nearly 3 months early. He weighed only 1 pound 6 ounces, and doctors gave him only a 10% chance of survival. But Gannon was a fighter from the beginning to the end. He was very intelligent. He was in the gifted and talented classes at school. He was kind and caring to everyone he met. His family called him G-Man, and the G stood for little gentleman. His little sister called him Bubba. His favorite color was blue. He loved tacos and Legos, playing his Nintendo Switch and Sonic. He wanted to be a YouTuber someday. He was a sweet, kind, beautiful boy who was violently taken far too soon. All I can say is that the world needs more Gannons. As for Letitia, all I can say about her is that I hope every single day is worse than the one before. This case infuriated me as a mother, as a stepmother, as a human being. She is the lowest of the fucking low, and I truly hope that karma visits you in that cell every single day. Holy shit. This episode was brought to you by Sun King's Osiris. Not sponsored, but it helped get me through. This is a heavy one, guys. Thank you to those who stuck it out. I am happy that justice was found for Gannon, but also so genuinely heartbroken that this happened to him in the first place. That's it for today, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate, review. It really helps. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell random people you meet in public. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Criminally Nerdy Podcast, Twitter, X, whatever it is, at Crime Nerd Pod, or shoot me an email, criminallynerdypodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, keep it nerdy.